central New Mexico. October 19th, 2019. Investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe has invited ancient astronaut theorist Giorgio Tsoukalos to join her on a trip to a spot in the desert just outside Roswell, very near what is known as the skip site. According to eyewitnesses, one of the 3 UFOs seen in the sky in July 1947 first crashed to Earth near this location, then was propelled back into the air, skipping like a stone in a pond before finally coming to rest. Linda was contacted by geologist Frank Kimbler, who wants to show her mysterious metal fragments that he found here and search the area for more.
Linda, this is so exciting. I have not been here in a couple of years, so I'm really looking forward to meeting Frank.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we've got a geologist who's helping, because the geologist looks at land and says if there is debris, there's going to be some kind of a drift with the land. And just from what I know, he has studied some areas meticulously.
Right.
Giorgio and Linda arrive at the skip site and meet Frank Kimbler, a local geologist and professor of earth science.
How are
Nice
you?
to meet you.
Good
How
to
are
see
you?
you. All right.
Frank,
Linda,
it is-
finally.
Yes, you and I have been chasing these artifacts.
Chasing the
from
metals,
UFOs for
looking for
so many
looking for
years.
parts.
Yes.
Professor Kimbler has spent nearly a decade searching areas beneath the purported trajectory of the Roswell craft with infrared technology and metal detectors.
When an object crashes, they're going to scatter a variety of materials around. Knobs, control devices, plastic, wires, whatever. If it's coming apart, it's going to leave those pieces behind. And those are the kinds of pieces that I want to find and have found some of.
Since 2011, Professor Kimbler has uncovered more than a dozen metal fragments that he has subjected to scientific testing and found to be highly unique.
That's what we want to go out there and see where
Yeah, I
you've been
can't
getting
wait.
this.
Frank,
Yeah.
what's inside the case?
Oh, this is the magic right here. This is some of the material that I have found out here using a metal detector.
Interesting.
This stuff is very interesting. It's all twisted and mangled up. Something that you would expect to happen from a crash is to have metal that's compact and twisted.
When Professor Kimbler laid out his box of his pieces of metal, the first thing that struck me is these were tiny, tiny, tiny fragments. Could they possibly be from wreckage?
These pieces are small, which is things that the government would have missed. They wouldn't have been able to find it.
And here's my magic. Let's get a comparison here.
Oh,
This-
look at that. Look at that.
Look at, it's like a
that's-
snowfield. After all these years, all of the pieces, they look absolutely pristine. That's the magnesium zinc side.
This has got layers to it. That's amazing. It's
But I bet you've never seen anything like
no.
this.
Being an earth scientist, being a geologist, I've seen lots of all kinds of materials that are out there. I have never, ever seen anything like this. This fragment that Linda is showing me, that stuff is absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. And what's interesting about it is that it has some layers, some banding on it. And that banding is very similar to some of the banding that I found in photomicrographs of the material that I have from out here.
I think as
That is
Giorgio
awful.
is holding this, he's holding something made by another intelligence from someplace we don't understand, and this is truly extraterrestrial.
Is it possible that Giorgio is holding an actual fragment of an extraterrestrial craft? And if so, could even more incredible artifacts still remain in the desert outside Roswell? As far as Professor Kimbler is concerned, if one or more extraterrestrial crafts really did crash in the desert, the best place to find more debris is right here.
Right now, we are roughly about maybe 2.5 miles from where the object skipped down, according to eyewitness accounts. This is actually the disturbed area right here, which is right where we're going. And it's right where the eyewitness accounts basically says that the craft left a furrow. So you can tell that something went on. It even looks like there's a little gouge mark that was left by the craft as it came in.
The disturbed area that Professor Kimbler identified has become known as the Gouge. In 2002, an archaeological dig was conducted in this area by the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque, to search for topographical evidence of a UFO crash.
They found a V-shaped gouge that seemed to indicate that something came down and skated across the ground, like a typical aircraft crashing into the ground, leaving a big furrow there.
Author Donald Schmidt, an advisor to the International UFO Museum and Research Center Board of Directors, took part in the excavation.
We flagged that area, did electromagnetic sensory testing of the site to sift through possible samples from the crash, all in an attempt to find a piece of that missing evidence that would demonstrate once and for all that this was something extraordinary.
Pahrump, Nevada, 1996. Art Bell, founder and original host of the paranormal-themed radio program Coast to Coast AM, begins receiving shipments in the mail of mysterious metallic fragments.
Art Bell started getting 2 shipments coming from a man who identified himself in a series of 5 typed letters and said he was an Army sergeant, that his grandfather had died in 1974 and had left a box that had a diary and medals. In the diary, it said that the grandfather, with a group of security people, saw a wedge-shaped craft that was on what was then called in the 40s White Sands Proving Ground in southern New Mexico. The grandfather saw the bottom of it glow for 3 hours while they stood around it, and he pulled off scrapings. He called them scrapings from the bottom of the wedge-shaped craft where it had glowed.
Art Bell turned over these mysterious fragments and letters to investigative journalist Moulton Howe for further study. In June of 1996, Linda commissioned University of Michigan researchers to use a scanning electron microscope and a technique known as X-ray fluorescence spectrometry to analyze the samples and determine their makeup.
It was made out of bismuth, almost pure, 1 to 4 microns, and that was the black layer. The next layer was 97.6% magnesium, 2.4% zinc, and that layering was alternating like that. So I went to an exotic metals manufacturer in New Jersey, and I said, "How would you make this?" He said, "Nobody can put bismuth and magnesium together. It will automatically come apart." This had to have been manufactured by some kind of an advanced technology, and he didn't know what that would be either.
I think we've got technology that we didn't make. A lot of people have come forward with bits and pieces of the same tale. We are presently analyzing metamaterials that we did not make, that's created in a way that is beyond our technology.
Hey, Linda.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
To learn more about these strange metallic fragments, in 2019, ancient astronaut theorist Georgios Tsoukalos met up with Moulton Howe at a secure storage facility in Los Angeles, California.
Man, this is some door. Okay.
Well, over the years, I've learned that this is really pretty valuable.
Right.
And I better keep it in something like a safety deposit box.
Right.
Earlier in 2019, the United States Army took an interest in doing its own examination of these materials. Linda is eager to show Giorgio just what it is that has caught the Army's attention.
Here is where the magic bismuth, magnesium,
There
zinc
it is,
resides.
inside the magic
Yeah.
box.
Here, I'll take it over here and show it to you. I have found, since having this in 1996 and evolving with research, that it has become now so valuable.
What am I looking at, Linda? What is this?
Here is, see all these layers?
Yeah.
When you go to a scanning electron microscope and you see that the black side, it's pure bismuth, and it's 1 to 4 microns, which is about half the size of a blood cell. And then it's alternating, just like a torte cake.
Yeah.
And the top silver, that's the magnesium zinc alloy.
Okay.
So layer by layer by layer in microns.
It's almost as if it's reflective, too.
Yes, and when you get it in the sun, it looks like a snowfield, and that's the magnesium zinc.
In addition to this layered material, Linda also has an unusual piece of aluminum.
As I understand from a physicist, it is this pure aluminum, 99.5% pure aluminum.
As far as I know, we can't produce 99. I mean, this is incredibly pure. So where were these pieces allegedly found?
These came out of white sands in New Mexico outside of Roswell.
Is there a connection to Roswell with this piece?
Wiltshire, England, July 1992. Linda Moulton Howe travels to the location with the highest occurrences of crop circles in the world to investigate the phenomenon up close. Near a site called Mill Kill, she finds herself at a 400-foot-long formation which had just appeared in a wheat field.
I made the step into this huge pattern, and that was the first time that I saw layer, 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 7 layers, all of these different angles that were coming up from all of these layers over this large, huge pattern. And I have this feeling of a presence that is there.
Linda has traveled widely and looked deeply into this mystery. She's interviewed a lot of the farmers in whose fields some of the most amazing formations have occurred. And she's spoken to witnesses who have seen strange balls of light that in some cases people believe have actually caused those formations.
One of the most memorable of all time was in the Cherry Hill area. It was a huge pattern. There were 4 of us, and we ended up feeling that other intelligences are here and that the crop formations were somehow a signal.
One of the most peculiar anomalies that Linda observed while examining crop circles had to do with plant nodes. A node in a plant is a structure on the stem where leaves, buds, or other parts of the plant may grow. Linda noticed at many crop circles that the plant nodes within the formation were significantly longer than the plant nodes outside the formation. She collected samples and sent them to biophysicist W.C. Levengood at the University of Michigan for laboratory analysis.
What Levengood determined was that many of these nodes acted as though they were subjected to localized heat at the node, which caused the water inside the node basically to blow out, blast out, causing the stalk to flop over the way it did.
The so-called blown nodes have actually been expanded and blown out by perhaps microwave radiation. Now that's not done by people with sticks and shovels and pieces of board and rope.
Very much like with the cattle mutilations, suddenly the crop circle phenomena took on an elevated sort of perspective in the mainstream community.
For Linda, just as important as pursuing the truth is disseminating her findings as widely as possible. But when she set out to try and release her research in a book, she was turned away by a publisher in New York.
I'm saying to the editor, I want lots and lots of evidentiary material in documents and photos. I want it to be a book that would hold up in a court of law. And he said, I'm very interested in doing your book, but under no circumstances would we ever publish these disgusting animal photos. And I remember saying, sir, they're evidentiary. They show there are no tracks. They show the absence of the blood on the animals. I have pathology reports that the way that the excisions have been made are not known to any technology by any pathologist on this planet. And he said it again, disgusting. And what is always my backup? I have to do it myself.
My mother has made it a point to do everything on her own because it would be done the right way. When she started her book, An Alien Harvest, it took her 10 years of research. She doesn't like to stop unless she gets to what she wants.
In 1989, Linda self-published the culmination of her research in An Alien Harvest.
The book Alien Harvest was the first time that an investigative reporter had brought together the documentation in book form that detailed, with over 300 illustrations, maps and diagrams, and documents that detailed the link between animal mutilations and non-human intelligence. And it's still a very widely sought and widely referenced book.
I followed with Glimpses Volume 1 and Glimpses Volume 2, which had a lot of physical, straightforward evidence. And those 3 books, I think, are almost as important as the TV programs.
Linda's books provided hard facts and compelling theories, and amassed more than a decade worth of investigations on bizarre animal mutilations, unexplained crop formations, and another mysterious phenomenon that had captured her attention: alien abductions. In the 1990s, Art Bell's paranormal-themed radio talk show, Coast to Coast AM, boasted 15 million listeners nightly. And Linda Moulton Howe considered it the perfect outlet for sharing her investigations with the public. Linda's regular appearances as both a guest and a host spanned 28 years, making her tenure on the show longer than both Art Bell's and current host George Norrie's.
Linda's done some great reports over the years. They run the gamut from strange sightings to abduction cases, you name it. Anything paranormal that you've heard in your life, Linda's covered it on Coast to Coast.
While Linda was able to reach millions of listeners on Coast to Coast, she still felt she needed her own means for disseminating information directly to the public.
What was coming into me in that period of time were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters. I could open them, but I realized that I didn't have any vehicle at all in which to interact with the world, and then I just said it out loud: Earth Files. I want to do Earth Files. And that is how it began.
On November 28th, 1998, Linda launched Earth Files as an archive for her many years of research, and created a website so that she could share the details of her investigations with the public. Almost 10 years later, in 2007, she started an Earth Files YouTube channel where she could report live on her latest findings.
This is Earth Files, the award-winning news site with the latest updates in science, environment, and real X-Files.
She's got over 250,000 followers worldwide. She writes the program, she edits it, she produces it, she does all the research. It is her. And you can almost describe Earth Files as her magnum opus, really, because this will ultimately live on as her archives.
Earth Files and Coast to Coast have provided Linda a much wider audience with which to share her research. But of even greater value to her is hearing from the public. And even before she had these outlets, Linda was contacted frequently by people who alleged to have been abducted by extraterrestrials.
As the decade of 1990 turned, I got a handwritten letter from a woman named Linda Porter. And she sent drawings. And it was about her coming into a relationship with extraterrestrials in which they seemed to be wanting her to become like a spokesperson.
Linda investigated Linda Porter's account and included it in her book, Glimpses of Other Realities.
The Linda Porter story is one of the biggest stories Linda Howe ever wrote about because it wasn't a crop circle or a cow. Here's what it was: a human being encountering creatures from another realm, another reality.
That was the first time in my work as an investigative journalist that Linda Porter and others all of a sudden began to be contacting me about experiences they had with extraterrestrial beings. They were coming to me to say, here are my drawings, here is what I have seen.
Author Whitley Strieber became one of the most high-profile alleged alien abductees when he wrote about his encounter with extraterrestrials in his 1987 book, Communion. But before he told his story to the world, he told it to Linda Moulton Howe.
Linda is a very open-minded person, and you don't feel uncomfortable sharing weird stories with her. I don't think that either of us was too deep into the abduction material when we met back in 1986, but nobody was. But she didn't have any problem with my story. She just wanted to know more.
As with animal mutilations and crop circles, Linda immersed herself in the abduction phenomenon, and it led to a major revelation.
I've interviewed now more than 3,000 people in the abduction syndrome. Right from the beginning, I was confused about the various physical descriptions. The standing up reptiles, the standing up grays, and the Nordic blondes. We have tall whites, 10 to 12 feet tall. That's biblical. Those are like the giants.
The cases that Linda looked into allowed us to tell a much deeper, richer story about multiple races, different agendas, and programs that are going on. The idea that humanity may be the subject of some extraterrestrial program of some sort.